Hola community, welcome to another episode of Blender.Today Live, this weekly gathering meeting where we see what's new in Blender and around Blender in the community. Today we have one announcement that it's pretty exciting because it's the London-based studio Blue Zoo is actually looking for Blender generalists. So yeah, more studios that are actually using Blender. If you don't know Blue Zoo, they describe themselves as a studio with a bunch of BAFTAs, you know, just a bunch of BAFTAs. But yeah, you should check out what they are, what they do, and also apply. Why not? Actually, if you look up the description, it's a generalist, but also a bonus would be to have some compositing stuff, some knowledge of compositing. So yay for that. It is, and actually Blender is like the main thing, and bonus point is to basic knowledge of other software. Isn't that crazy? And to live in those days. Wouldn't even imagine it back some years ago. All right, besides that, that's it. Actually, Blender 3.2.1, that's another announcement that actually is a bit more related to Blender, the software, is that if you are using Blender 3.2.0, which is maybe unlikely if you are actually following this news, but if you have, please update, because 3.2.1 fixes a ton of stuff, like over 70 issues in the release notes of 3.2 on the wiki. Under corrective releases, you're gonna see the full list of everything that gets fixed, especially in Eevee. Eevee didn't get a ton of updates in 3.2, but they were mainly under the hood, and that broke a few things, so yay for that. There is a 3.2.1 release. It's like a countdown. 3, 2, 1. All right, next, I think we can just start checking out what's new in Blender. My favorite, I'm gonna start with the user interface. My favorite feature, it's not the biggest feature of the week, but is my personal favorite, is that you can now finally pin a scene to a workspace. What does it mean? It means that you can basically have a workspace where you are doing modeling and a workspace where you are doing video editing in another scene. So the scene is independent, the scene is separate in each workspace, which means you can actually make use of this much better. So how does it work? Well, first you need more than one scene, of course. So in each one, for example, if in modeling you want to be modeling with scene 0.1, you just pin it with a pin icon here next to the name. Very convenient. That was a change done recently by Julian. And in the other one, you can just have like unpinned. You can have the active scene always changing, but when you go back, this will always be there. That is awesome. It's awesome, because especially for video editing, because usually, you know, for video editing you can't have the same scene as strip or you need to have another scene usually. So super nice. How's the chat going? Is there a Blender group chat on Telegram? There's no official Blender group on Telegram, by the way. If you find one, it's a community effort. Just saying. Next, oh yeah, the change was to have the icon imposed on top of it instead of adding yet another row, and I think it looks much better. It's less noisy, but also this whole UI, like it's called the ID template UI, needs some work. There is a patch that it's been on the to-do list forever, but I hope it can be tackled not too long from now. There's two changes in the UI that I forgot to mention last week. One of them is the custom properties panel that it was missing from collections. You could actually have the custom properties added via Python, but there was no UI for it. And the custom properties panel is something that is available pretty much on every data block, and it was missing. Remember a couple of weeks ago, actually, was also added to the dope sheet sidebar. And this, for example, this is a good example of how such a simple well, such a big thing that there's a whole panel missing. It's actually just a few lines of code. If you want to, if you notice something like that and you want to help with Blender development, that's a one way to get involved with a small change. And the other change is mainly a shout out to Ariel Ramati for taking the time to go and add tooltips to a lot of the shading nodes. Remember some weeks ago, a couple months ago, the option to finally add tooltips to nodes was added, even for custom nodes and even like scripted nodes and sockets as well, and labels as well. So we are finally getting some UI improvements in nodes. Then after this, I think Hans even did a pass on it, so thank you, Hans, for that. And thanks Wahuni for the custom properties panel change. All right, so my favorite feature was just one icon in the UI. It's a big feature, but the big feature this week is that hair curves are finally non-experimental anymore. They're going to be an official part of Blender 3.3 LTS. To celebrate that, Andy Goralczyk made a video about hair curves in hair curves. Let's see if Google got it already. Here. No, I'm looking at myself. All right, if you go to the Blender Foundation, I think they didn't. No, it's the future of hair grooming. We went very humble with that, and that is, yeah, that's basically it. It's not clickbait. It's actually true. This is, like, even like it or not, this is the future. The tools that are being used and developed are going to be part of 3.3, and it's just the basics. The Blender, the Canon system for particle hair is not going to go away. The system as of now, it's there. It survived the pass of time and the pass of a lot of time because it hasn't been updated in a while. It was marked as end of life. So when people were asking for like new features for the hair system, the particle system, or for bug fixes would still happen. Like if there were bugs in the system, they would still be fixed, but no new features introduced because it was marked as end of life, because it would be replaced with nodes, everything nodes, right? So that's part of this is part of the process. And Andy made an awesome video, just an overview of the new system, the way they organize this hair curves system, for example, because the hair curves can use geometry nodes. In this case, there is an example where Andy shows that they use the same system for the beard twice, you know, like the same way you can use the same mesh data in two different objects, like when you do Alt-D to have linked data. Well, the same you can do with this. You can have one beard object with that it's, I don't know, 5 objects using the same data. So if you trim one, it will trim in both, but because objects have their own modifiers, you know, modifiers are only object level, you can make it look completely different, or one with more, I don't know, longer hairs, or more patchy, or more you name it. That is the beauty of this, that you can actually have objects sharing the same curve data but completely change it via geometry nodes. Okay, that is kind of a big one. And I think at the time of making of this video that you will find, by the way, this video is here in this channel, so if you have notifications enabled with the little the bell icon next to the subscribe button, if you haven't pressed it, consider it. I really hope we can reach 1 million at the end of the year. Would be a good milestone. I said the same last year, we didn't make it, so let's try this one this year. But if you have seen this video, you may have noticed that by the time of the making of this video, the feature to have the hair deform with the mesh. So if your mesh is rigged, for example, it wasn't there yet. That has been fixed. On Friday, a new node show up in the geometry nodes system for curves. It is called the form curves on surface, and it's just that basically. So I can actually just show you here, right here. So if you have, say, a character and you have a new let's add a wave modifier, so we have it moving around. If you add a new empty hair curve, so if you go to Shift A, curve, empty hair, this will actually do a few things under the hood for you. First, it's gonna take the object that you selected and add to that object a new child object called curves, and that curves is gonna have a geometry nodes modifier that inside has just one node, which is the form curves on surface. There you go. And it complains because there is no anything. Actually, I didn't add hair, so it's okay to complain. I'm gonna go to sculpt mode, and I think by default it doesn't have any tool selected, but it should have some. Maybe the density, because that way you can just start getting this masterpiece. And there you go. Now it deforms. If you mute that here, the hair doesn't move. This is what happened until a few days ago on Friday. Was committed that now it actually follows the mesh. And this is, oh, by the way, did you notice that now it has an outline around it, and you can actually click on it to select. It doesn't have the bounding box anymore. The outline is an overlay, so if you have the outline overlay, it should go away. And for 3.3, this node is gonna stay as S. However, in the future, this will be made more generic, because what it does here basically is just telling Blender to the form to follow what you already set in the curves and their surface. So basically taking this object. And I think in the future the plan is to have this input available here in the node itself. So yeah, but that's more for the future. All right. And that it's and a UV input. Yeah, maybe that's true. Does the new hair have physics? No, there is no physics for curves yet. That has to be implemented. And curves also don't have like cloth simulate. No, it doesn't have. So no, not yet. All right. What else? Oh, by the way, speaking of overlays and curves, there is now a new overlay for when you want to select things. Isn't it great? You can now see the selection. You even have soft selection. You can even adjust the opacity of that selection. It's like a mask on top of it, and it's gonna draw darker the unselected points. And there is two types of selection. One of them is the selection paint for like the entire object, or for just select the endpoints. You can do select endpoints, and it should, you start drawing, there you go, you can select the entire point, the entire curves, or just the points, the control points. And if you do select endpoints, it's gonna select just the endpoints at the end of those trans. You should just check Andy's video, because he actually explains this. And that it's it. One, in terms of performance, one node, the subdivide node, has been ported into the new system. That is gonna make it better performance. All right. Is the new hair system out already? It's part of the alpha of 3.3 alpha. So it's not officially out, because Blender 3.3 is still not out until September. but you can play with it already. You go to Builder.Blender.org and download the 3.3 alpha. Next. Ooh, rigging. How about rigging? We don't have this kind of conversation usually about like weight painting and vertex painting and stuff. Well, this change will make a lot of people happy because it fixes a long-awaited well, it was just not consistent, basically. What happens? Well, the change is called Weight on Vertex Paint. Always respect edit mode hiding on faces. What does it mean? Well, in some cases, it is mandatory to be able to hide parts of the mesh in order to paint certain areas. The mask modifier doesn't work in weight paint. And edit mode hiding requires using selection, which is not always convenient. You don't want to change your selections just to show or hide or to actually not show the hidden parts. This makes the weight and vertex paint modes always respect the edit mode hiding like Sculpt does. And also the changing behavior affects drawing and building paint PVVH, so should it be actually performant as well. And it affects brushes, but it doesn't affect operators like smooth or normalized. So yeah, if you go to the task, actually you can already see the excitement by many familiar faces here, like Matt, the rigger here at the studio, and Rigging Dojo, and Sankudo. Yeah, so yay for that. Okay. Mr. Robert asks, what is the latest stable 3.2.1? If you want to know what is the stable one, you can just go to Blender.org, and usually the big button here is going to tell you which version. Or just go to download, and then this number, this is the official latest stable release in Blender. If you want to have an LTS release, something that is been supported for longer, then go to Get Blender LTS, and here you're gonna see the latest, the active ones, and the previous one, which are no longer. Actually, this page I updated last week because it was still saying was still talking about the 3.2.83 as like maintained, but it's not. Okay. The next section, let's talk about the outliner. There's two changes in the outliner. Actually, one is ID management, not necessarily outliner, but the first one, library overrides. In hierarchy mode, Blender will now show the child objects under the parent object, which is, you could say, expected. Yes. However, under the hood, Blender doesn't handle things like that. Each child is its own object that happens to have a relationship. So the old system used to show it like child, parent, and then just a parent, like both on the top level. And that can be confusing, understandable, because this is how you're used to see the data in Blender. And the same with the when you have multiple objects, the child object or the parent will show multiple times for each child object, which can make things a little unreadable. So new. There, this is how it looks. So this is more how you would expect it. It's a fix. From the point of view of a user, it's a fix, but inside, under the hood, is not. Next update. ID management, purge, make outliner button user cursive purge. The purge setting, the option in the orphan data section of the outliner now is gonna purge not only that object but also the dependencies, its dependencies, to make things nice and tidy. Same as the compositor. The VFX team, or in this case Sergey, and has been making the compositor a bit smarter when dealing with movie clips. The movie clip node now, well, actually a few nodes are going to choose the active movie clip from the scene by default instead of being empty, instead of having the field empty. So for example, the keying screen, the track position, or the plane track deform, now they're going to be like pre-filled with the active, the scene. Let's look for it. Active clip of the scene. In the scene settings, you can set it here. And this will make it so other areas of Blender follow. And the same for the tracking fields. In this case, it will also pre-fill the tracking object name as well as the plane track name. What else? I continue looking at the chat. I downloaded Blender from the Ubuntu store, not from the site. Ubuntu, well, from Snap. If you download from Snap, it should also, like, Blender has an official Snap repo, and which is, I think, what Ubuntu uses, Snap. So if you use it from there, it's gonna update automatically, and you don't have to do anything. You're always gonna have the latest stable release. Or just, I mean, just open Blender and see the number here on the top right that it should say 3.2.1. Okay. Next, well, a bit of everything. Performance. Duplicating objects is now faster. Isn't that great when they improve things that you use all the time? Like duplicating objects. So Shift D now in 10,000 cubes on Windows on an AMD Ryzen, top of the line, went from 13.6 seconds to 9.2 seconds. That's nice, and it's actually nicer even when you do Alt D, so linked duplicate, 4.76 seconds to 1.53 seconds. Much welcome. Thank you, Aras, for working on this and all the OBJ stuff that I want to mention in a bit. But first, let's talk cycles. Linux people using... Okay, this might be a very small niche. It's Linux people that are using the still unreleased Intel graphics cards. Although this is not, it is beyond the new graphics card. This is just the general API. The one API is now enabled for Linux release builds. So if you go to the preferences on Linux and you have a well, if you check in one API, it's going to tell you. If you don't have an Intel GPU, it's going to tell you about it, and also it's going to tell you which version of the driver you need. But that is still too early. However, it's good to know. I wonder if they're also going to make it work with like Intel graphic, like built-in graphics, like the HD something something. I hope. Next, in cycles now, the curves have a default radius. Sorry, I'm going through puberty and changing my voice still. The curves on cycles, you may have noticed that sometimes on Eevee they will show one way, and then cycles it will show it differently. It's because cycles by default wasn't giving any width, any radius to the curves. So now it is. It's a very small size, but much better than the 1 meter default that it had in the past. So this should fix it, make it faster by default, and also should be consistent with Eevee. Next, in the input and output section of the day, there is a speed up on Alembic, USD, and OBJ for large scenes. How much faster? Well, it depends on which type of data you're working on, but for example, on a big file like the Blender 3.0 splash screen, the one with Ellie from Sprite Fright with a small sprite in the hand, that went from 43 seconds to 32.9 seconds. This scene has around 24,000 objects, so it's a good test for this kind of stuff. However, the USD file by Disney, the Disney Moana example file that they provide on their website, that USD has 260,000 objects, on which now the developer here doesn't even mention how long it would take before, but because it would crash anyway. But now this saves around 2 hours with this new change. And it still crashes though, but it crashes somewhere else. Like the import happens like the crash was even before or after the patch. So it's somewhere else. It's a good thing they're testing it though with that kind of scenes. 260,000, a real production scene. 2 hours faster. All right. Although it would be nice to know where the crash is. Maybe it's in shaders, in the object, in the modifiers. Oh no. A crash happens 2 hours earlier, like Pops mentioned. Yeah, exactly. That's a good way of putting it. Okay, and whoa, finally. Remember Blender 3.0? Remember? Those were the days. 3.0 went so fast. I feel like I missed how cool the 3.0 change was. Because now we're in 3.3, 3.4. Alpha is gonna start in like a month or so. But yeah, 3.3 was kind of a big deal. And also introduced a bunch of things like cycles X, but also a new OBJ importer exporter that was so much faster, written it in C++ instead of Python like the old one. However, in 3.0.1, I believe, it was reverted, and it was not reverted, it was marked as experimental, and then the Python version was marked as like the official one, like the one you use by default. That's because there wasn't really like a feature parity yet. The C++ version, even though it was faster, it was missing a lot of features from the Python version, so it got reverted. The same for 3.2, for 3.1, for 3.2, and for 3.3. Finally, it looks like the OBJ exporter importer based in like C++, the fast one, has finally met the feature parity with the Python one. So it is now graduated. I love graduations into a first class citizen. The Python one has been marked as legacy, still around, so you can still use it in case something goes wrong, but the new one is gonna just have the same name, like OBJ importer exporter. Yay for that. Thank you, Anas, for working on it for so long and all this time. Speaking of add-ons, kind of, yeah, well, because the OBJ importer exporter was the Python version was an add-on actually. By the way, I'm running for the first time ever with the aircon because it wasn't just too hot outside, so I hope it's not too much. I hope you can't tell. All right, add-ons. Let's talk about add-ons. Rigify has an option that allows you to make the limb scaling optional, and it's off by default because it's apparently only useful according to feedback from artists for cartoon style. So it is optional and it hides the constraint. Yeah. The next change, it has to do with horses. So this is just maybe a PSA. If you have made a horse rig using Rigify and you notice something weird when moving one of the ears, well, it's not just you, it's Rigify. Apparently the parenting was wrong. So many bones were actually parented to the left ear, like many bones in the head, like the nose and stuff. They were parented to an ear, so you move an ear and it would move the nose. That has been fixed, and now they're all parented to the head, which makes a little bit more sense, right? Funny though, that I don't know when this broke, but you know, I was hoping somebody would have the report, the bug report had a video. It would be very cool to see the video of a horse nose moving. Okay, next let's talk about Node Wrangler. One new option. So when you use the frame selected operator, when you select a few things, you make a frame out of them. Now there is an option called custom color, where you can specify the color of the frame directly from the operator settings. So saves you a few clicks. The GLTF exporter now has an option for exporting all the actions of a single armature. The option is called export all armature actions. All should be capitalized. Next, make some official chrono extensions about materials. So these extensions are now supported by the GLTF importer exporter. And last but not least, Animal, the add-on Animal and Sun Position now have French translation. Ooh la la. This two add-ons have been changed by Damien, and the translations you can find is translation.py are they look great according to my French level. Très bien. Yeah. I just read Pops mentioning it. I just tried to practice my French. All right, next, related to add-ons, you know, the add-ons are made using Python. So how about the latest version of Python that is not even out yet, is beta? It's Blender already supports it. So support doesn't mean that has changed. Before you get the pitchforks and start like coming to the Blender studio, okay, no. Blender now internally supports the Python 3.11 beta. Just some changes needed to be done so it can support both 3.10 and 11. But the official the version is still 3.10. It's just supporting if you want to build with a newer Python version. And there is a new property in matrix. There is the isIdentity. Is a read-only attribute that is more convenient if you want to check if it's if a matrix is a matrix identity or not. In the potpourri section, a bit of everything. Internally, this has no effects in users yet, but internally now Blender supports variable fonts. What is a variable font is amazing. With one font, you can have all sorts of changes. The width, the weight, for example. I use it in Blender.org all the time. So this bold and this that is not bold is actually the same one font file that is just variation and is using just making it bigger, and it's super cool. Instead of doing like 2-3 requests, one for italic, one for, it's just one file, and it's super light as well. So super good to see this finally being adopted. Wayland, there were some Linux people in the class today, in the room, not class. The Ghost and Wayland/Wayland implementation keep moving forward, and this is kind of a big deal, this change, because it's the commit goes as follows: support dynamic loading libraries for Wayland. What does it mean? That Blender will now be able to, when it's built with Wayland and dynamic library loading, that you can load whatever is available, or if not, just fall back to X11. So the best of both worlds to test this kind of stuff. And last but not least, this is not a new feature, it's a bug fix, but I think it's if you've been uping driven modifiers, so if you added drivers to modifiers and notice that things were slow, update your Blender to the latest, because that has been fixed. Apparently, even if the driver was off, was completely disabled, it would still be calculated on every frame, so playback could be very slow. This has been fixed, and it should now make if you suddenly see that your scene, which you happen to have a lot of modifiers being driven, and now plays back faster, is thanks to this great man, Sergey Sharevin, and this great other person, Dimitar, for making a bug report. So yay, thanks for people for making bug reports, and thanks for the people that fix them. Okay. Oh, there is a fix that is gonna change our lives, but it's not there yet. I'm gonna keep pushing. Has to do with UI. Don't want to spoil much. All right. let's go to Blender.Today and try to answer some of the questions of the day. I'm gonna have a little drink and a little sip. Not little drink. The drink is drink. Just the sip. Okay. Oh, I forgot to... I'll try to do the... Somebody requested to have the full screen version of a post. I'm gonna... Maybe not tonight, but I will try to add it to my to-do soon. Alright, so the questions. Let's see. Villalvena says... Hi Pablo, is there some hope to get Eevee next and the viewport compositor in 3.3? No, there is absolutely no hope at all, because those are because the VR in Beacon 2. So Blender is split in, I explained this many times and I remember your name, so you probably know already that Blender is split in 5 stages. The Blender development of each release is split in 5. Beacon 1 for accepting all kinds of big features development and stuff. Beacon 2, no huge features, but still big additions to what is already implemented in Beacon 1. And Beacon 3 is just enters beta, so there is no new things, no UI changes. Beacon 4 is the last changes, critical fixes only. And Beacon 5 is when everything is frozen and the documentation, everything is packaged into the actual build that you download from Blender.org. So we are in Beacon 2, which means no big features added, which means no, these features are huge. So yeah, no, we're not gonna get that. Photo Enix, hola Pablo, please use Dark Read It. It uses 0% GPU. Is it too much to add? I use Chrome, so it should be okay. But it's gonna add it by default to everything. Okay, I'm gonna... Well, now I finished reading this. Sorry, I should have added it before. But I'm gonna do it now because otherwise I'm gonna forget. Add extensions. How many people is it? 4 million. Is it open source? Is it really open source? Where is GitHub? Yeah, it's on GitHub. Not sponsored by GitHub. Is it open source? It's sponsored by people, so hopefully they don't need to do weird stuff. Where is the code? Here is GitHub. Ah, okay, it's open source. Oh no, but it's not enabled everywhere. Okay, never mind. Ooh, this is how Blender.Today looks like. No, I don't like this. I made the design of this website, that's why it's... okay, I'm gonna just disable it for now. It's okay, and off, and then I can turn it on in specific websites, right? Site list, and then invert listed only, and then now I can go to developer.blender.org and then turn it on and say filter. How do I add this website? There, bam. All right. Is it correct? Yes. Okay. Now you had it. Thanks for the reminder. Next. Hi Pablo. Thanks. Gonna throw some rather quick, hopefully simple questions at you from most to least pressing. All right. Number 1. Has multi-volume and aggregate volume support been suggested for Blender yet? Not that I know. On that note, what is your take on having multiple solvers with overlapping uses in Blender? Powerful? Better left to add-ons? I'm all in for multiple solvers. I think it's impossible to have one algorithm that covers everything. So, yay for more. Just specific use cases. It's the same for clothing, for physics, there's some that are gonna be better for still images, but for example, there is solvers that work great for, like, if you want to simulate something and have a few frames, but actually like more like real-time simulation, should be a different solver. Yes, absolutely, multiple solvers is the way to go. What are your thoughts on Uber solvers like Vellum that are intermaterial and matter phase? How about MantaFlow updates? I haven't tried this one in particular, and MantaFlow doesn't have many updates lately. Unfortunately, the developer that was working on that is no longer available to continue work on that. So either someone from the community jumps in and replaces or adds. I think most of the work to implement MantaFlow was to make it to make the layer in between, so you could hook in other systems that are not MantaFlow that could be used for that, for a similar workflow. Any news on the baking workflow? No, I just know that there is work being done on the texturing layer system, which is a similar, no, it's related to the work needed for baking. In a way. In a weird way, but yes, it is. Pablo, ven al lado, come to the dark side. My eyes don't hurt anymore. Okay, you have to thank Photoenix for it. Okay, is there any news on geometry nodes presets, pre-made node groups, or possibly, dare I say, a direct way to share node groups as files? Or are they assets in the asset browser? It is possible to make geometry nodes assets already in 3.2. It's not even in alpha. It's actually in 3.2 was already possible. It can be a little clunky appending files from when sharing. Yeah. No, you can use the asset browser, but the idea is in the future for Blender to come with built-in assets. The idea is in my deepest dreams, there are multiple things, but one of them is that the matcaps here, the HDR, for example, the options that you can choose in the world, this is a mini asset browser that you can just basically come here and have it available. So that way you can also use it for rendering. Wouldn't that be amazing? So yes, tomorrow we have a UI meeting. Maybe I'm gonna ask Julian about it, because he committed a change, an internal under the hood change that would improve the list view instead of just having like a flat list, but actual like a grid. And maybe that could be used for this. I'm gonna ask. But yeah, ideally this should be as a browser, which means that Blender could come with built-in assets that could be used for anything. I don't know. In Blender, I always remember this, the meme of not a meme, it's a drawing that shows all the other 3D softwares that is a bird with its own, these tiny birds, little chicks, how do you call it, the little birds, and they are teaching them to fly like very carefully. And Blender is the other way around. It's like they kick you out of the down of the tree, and you gotta learn how to fly by yourself. Example, there is no presets in materials. If you want to make glass, you gotta make it yourself. The glass shader is usually not enough. You gotta do some other things, and that applies to pretty much everything in Blender. The same with hair particles. If you want to make a nice hairdo, you have to use geometry nodes. The same with these modifiers. Ideally, these modifiers would eventually be geometry nodes, so they can be expanded. For example, people have been asking for an array, a circular array. This could just be on geometry nodes, and expandable with all these options. They could easily be geometry nodes. So the idea is out there, just needs to be performed. Okay, you make my week brighter. Thank you. You once wonder why there is no native English version. It's because you are replaced. Thank you. That's super nice. But yeah, really, if anybody wants to do this in by yourself, you can actually. Everything that I check, that I read, is publicly. Anybody could have started this. You don't have to work at Blender to make your Blender today. But I appreciate that you like. It's, you know, next week is gonna be, or the week after, I still have to decide. 200 episodes. That is, if we do like 40 something per year, that's like 5-6 years. Slug Nugget asks, hey Pubs, when you look into their crystal ball, how do you see Blender working way into the future? Do you think it will change radically in any way? It's a good question. I think it's gonna change radically because Blender will be more customizable in the future. The idea is that with the app templates, that when the ability to make the app templates much easier to edit, to make your own versions, I think Blender will start to look a lot different depending on the use. And interactive mode is gonna also make a big change in how how people use Blender, and how Blender is used as well in the same way that, I don't know, when you go to an exhibition like a conference and you see these apps for visualizing like I don't know, architectural visualization or VR or painting apps, and that could change. And if there is some way to get Blender running on an iPad, now with once the metal support is added, and hopefully if the policy of the apps in the App Store could include open source, that would be huge. And that would actually make Blender look different. How many questions are there? Because this was 2 minutes ago, and I should start from the bottom. Sorry, I'm gonna load more and start from the first questions. If this will load, there, just to be fair with the people that posted. Anna, could you please tell me if there might be a possibility in the near future of using pay-safe card pins as payment method for the development fund, but also for joining Blender Studio? Copying a statement I already made elsewhere, I want to add the following. I like playing in 3D. I'm taking this opportunity to express the appreciation I have for the creation and creator of Blender, and for all the people involved in shaping character of such a delightful companion. That's so nice. Thank you, Anna. Actually, the payments in Blender in general, like in Blender Foundation, Blender Studio, or the Blender Development Fund, usually in every app, the processing of a pay is, in most apps, they're not performed like by us. Like, you don't write the code to process payments because it can be just too much work. So usually there is like a layer, there is like another company that takes care of all the transactions and stuff, and that company, I think we're using Braintree, which takes care of online payment and stuff. And if they support that, then it will be implemented. But if you want to know more, please write to cloud support at Blender.org. If you go to the Blender Studio, the bottom there is like a contact section, and here, yeah, cloud support. Please write here to get the actual answer, because I don't know exactly. Paco says, hi Pablo, hope you're doing great. Thank you, I'm doing fantastic. My question is regarding the new hair system. Will it come to the Blender 3.3 final release with dynamic included? No, it will come to 3.3. It will be available from the menu, but dynamics are still, as I said, no new big features should be expected for 3.3 LTS. Also, because I mentioned the window for adding new features, big new features, is closed. Also, I heard that the project Heist will be rendering Eevee. Is it true? Yes, it is true. Actually, what you saw in the Blender Future of Grooming video, and this is Eevee. And what you can see already in the Blender Studio. If you're subscribed to the Blender Studio, you're gonna find in the Project Heist page, you have what the guys are doing here, like everything, every step, every week. It's a bit hard to navigate. This website is a bit needs some love, but you can see some cool stuff going on already. It's a bit of a spoil. No, it's not a spoil. It's at the beginning. It's not. Oh, actually, some things are marked as spoiler, but May. Wait, what does it jump from May to July 22? Ah, because this was multiple. Anyway, go check it out. My face when I can't click in the right pagination. Why not cycles? Because every other open movie project has been cycles in the past. Sprite Fright was cycles, Spring was cycles, and there was never like a real open movie project, like a bigger project made in Eevee. The previous one that was made with Eevee was Coffee Run, but Coffee Run was a smaller project and not at the scope of Project Heist. Wouldn't it be more realistic? Yes, it would be more realistic for sure, but where is the challenge, right? Next. Let's do 5 more questions. CG Tom says, hi Paulo, just wanted to thank you for the amazing work you do. Thank you. Your videos showcasing updates and new features always inspire me and motivate me on my Blender journey. That's super nice to hear. Thank you. CG Tom, what's your favorite thing about working at Blender? And when you started, did you ever think Blender would evolve into what it is today? What's my favorite thing? Well, my favorite thing about Blender is that it's still Blender. It's still from the Blender that I learned 20 years ago in 2002, 1 or 2 when I started. It still resembles that, and there is people that has been involved with Blender back then and is still right now. And you can tell that it's a passion project. You can tell from the commit logs that we see that there are people like working at crazy hours because they really want to do their best, and they just love it. It's like for some people it's a hobby, some people is more than that. It has changed lives. My favorite thing is while working at Blender is that I feel like there is impact in what we are doing. Okay, we are not planting trees or like, you know, like a big change, but I think opening giving the chance to people to express themselves and to use Blender. Blender is also used for many actual good things, you know, like making like special parts for people that need them, design. So just having an impact, super nice. When you started, did you ever think Blender would evolve into what it is today? No, not ever. Like to me, Blender still feels like this small thing, just small and fun, and I hope that never dies, never goes away. Although it is weird to see it now in like big YouTube channels or like people actually using it for. It's weird, but I still think that Blender has the spark still going. If one day Blender loses that spark, it's because the people involved at the beginning were not probably around anymore. But it's open source, so that will never happen. I mean, can always be forked. Do you know why Blender is faster when you only use GPU? When I use GPU plus CPU in optics, it's much slower. I notice a 40% slowdown in rendering performance. Well, because your graphics card is way too good. Sometimes when there is a difference in like too big of a difference between GPU and CPU, then it's no longer for example, the GPU can finish all the tiles that it has assigned, and then the CPU is still working on this one tile. So if there is too much of a difference, it's better to just use GPU. Yeah, that's basically it. This already has been asked. These two, actually, we need to fix the loading of this page. This question has been like a number of times. Yeah. What happened to the Summer of Code Grease Pencil Bezier stroke type project? It was a major feature because the rigging was so easy. You just needed to bind a view points and rigging was done. Can't believe this was not implemented. Is there any chance this will be a regular feature in the near future? Actually, I completely forgot about it. Yes, I remember. Well, file descriptor, the here Folk, actually he's an active developer of Grease Pencil, so I wonder, I mean, wasn't this implemented already? I know it was for rigging for I mean, just in October 2021. If you're interested in continuing the work, since I don't have much time to work on the branch now, it wasn't finished. Okay, so it was a lack of time, but actually Folk is involved in Blender like actively. He's working at Spa Studios, I think, even. If you don't know Spa Studios, you may recognize them. But yeah, they are using Grease Pencil there. They hired Folk to work on improving Grease Pencil for them. So shouldn't be too... I mean, now they're working on the Grease Pencil 2 version, or Grease Pencil Next, or Grease Pencil X, basically the equivalent to Even X and Cycles X, but for Grease Pencil. So maybe they are busy with that. Okay, let's do... Okay, I think if I answer these two, I actually cover everything. So let's answer these two, try to, and then call it a day. Hey bro, says FreeMind. Question: ever since 2.8, everything that has anything to do with grouping objects together was replaced with collections. Now that light groups are a thing, why aren't they based on collections like everything else? That's just weird. Why not make it consistent? Well, mainly because collections are by design, they hold objects, right? So you can have an object, a camera, a cube, a light. This is a collection. And light groups are supported even outside of objects, because a light group can be, for example, the world can be in a light group, and world can't be in a collection. The world is an entity. So yeah, that's one of the reasons. Yeah. Okay. And the last one: when will the node wrangler Ctrl+Shift+L left mouse button work the same on every node system, shader, geo, compositor? It adds a useless viewer node that doesn't make view it easily. Only work in shader. I think you are mixing the Ctrl+Shift+Click from geometry nodes. Ctrl+Shift+Click. This is not the node wrangler. This is actually a built-in Blender feature. And what it does, it exposes, allows you to show whatever here, and exposing it here in the viewer node. In the, oops, sorry, I didn't. In the spreadsheet editor. So that's why it's not that it's not consistent, is that, well, it is not consistent, but if you want to use the equivalent to the node wrangler viewer in geometry nodes, I think it's Control-Alt-Click or another combination of keys. And I think I didn't have the node wrangler enabled. All right, I think that covers everything for today. How is everybody doing? I am, even though I have the airco on, I hope it didn't sound too weird, too loud, too muffled. If so, it will make my life easier, because days are getting warmer in the Netherlands, likely. I hope to see you again next week. Is actually, it would be our 200th episode, and I'm not sure I would because next week actually there's not gonna be too many updates expected. and maybe we could make something special for the week after. So I'm gonna let you know in the social media channels, in YouTube as a post, and on the on our Twitter. So just saying. Can't hear the aircon. That's cool. Okay. I hope you had fun. I hope you enjoyed the new features. I hope you make use of the workspace pin, the scene pin. Is that something you were waiting for? To me, it was it's been a long time. I think even in 2.7 you could use something similar. Anyway, good old times. Oh, speaking of 2.7, you probably have seen it because this is one of the most popular. Is it the... If you probably have seen it on Twitter a few days ago, something insane happened, which is this video of... Do you remember the 2.7 version of Blender? And if you do remember, probably your knees hurt. So how about we live with this one?
Do you remember the 2.7 version of Blender? At the time it was a real contender. All the menus were really like rain.
It hurt.
In the beginning, no praises of Evie were we singing.
Then
What
it
the
turned.
fuck is a greasy pencil? Before they took the game engine away.
I feel your pain. Yo, Frankie.
Badia, say do you remember Badia, making shit in Blender, Badia, but the texture painting hasn't changed. Do you remember?
That is correct. It's accurate. However, I have good news for you, Savannah. There is like multiple developers working in different parts of it. Like the Sculpt Paint team is improving all the brush management, and there is a developer, Jeroen, is working on improving the when you paint over two different UI islands, that usually there is some color bleeding when you paint. Well, that is being worked on. And then the project for this year for adding layers, a layer system that it was actually described in the code blog from a few months ago, it's still the plan. It's still in the being worked on. So good news, and hopefully we'll see something soonish, although it was pretty nice. Thank you for working on that. All right, let's call it a day. And remember, if you were wearing headphones, watch out, because in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Hope it wasn't too loud. All right. Talk to you soon. At the same place? Soon. Have a great week, and I hope you liked it, enjoy it. Go open, share Blender, download it, share it with friends, with family, studios, at universities, and everywhere. Put it on a USB stick and take it for a walk. All right, now, bye, ciao.